Content warning. The stories and themes shared throughout this podcast may contain themes that can be distressing for you. If needed, please pause and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. If needed, please reach out to a mental health professional for support.
Welcome back to another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. Hold the Alana, but cue Tracy Matthews. So excited that she is here today. Tracy and I go, what feels like we go way back, but we met only in 2022. And it was just like such a game changer meeting her on so many different levels. We live in different parts of the continent, different countries. We've now met up in like Miami and in Mexico and in Arizona and I don't know where else. New York, maybe? I don't know.
Well, we're going to be meeting in New
We
York.
will be New. Well, yeah, by the
Yes.
time this records, we would have met in New
Yep.
York. And thank God for the internet and text messages because Tracy, like, I just admire you. You're so inspirational. And the fact that your story is in Resilient AF, Stories of Resilience Volume 2, and that you're here to talk about reinvention is just such an honor.
Well, thanks for having me, Blair. I'm so excited to be here. I love talking about reinvention, and my story inside of Resilient AF is one of my first reinvention stories.
Well, let's talk about it. What happened? Why did you have to reinvent
Well,
yourself?
can I just say something first before we talk about that?
Yeah.
Because from the second I met you, and especially when we dressed up the first night at the event that we were at, and you wore that sparkly silver coat, I knew we were going to be friends. I mean,
Yes. Yes.
there was no other choice.
No. I mean, it's kind of a moth to a flame.
I know.
I mean, like, if you don't like that coat, you don't deserve my friendship. But like that coat, that was the first time I ever had worn that jacket because I bought it in the peak of the pandemic. And when I met you, it was the first time like Canada opened their
Mm.
borders. And it was like my first trip after like everyone died. And I was just like, this jacket needs to come out. And I was so excited to wear it. And I'm so happy that it drew you to me.
It's such a great jacket, and it was such a fun night, and I loved, or a fun experience, and a fun event, and the whole thing. It was all perfect. So
So yeah, here
now
you
we
go.
have all the friends in common and whatever.
Yeah. And I just want to say like cuz we haven't started talking about Tracy's story yet, but we met at a business event and we developed probably like I'd say a lifelong friendship and you just never know who you're going to come across and I decided to go to this event that was it was fairly for me expensive at the time and also I didn't know anyone. I got on a plane, I flew to Mexico and I went to this business event with 200 plus other people and I didn't know anyone. I took a chance because I believe in me and I believe in you. So you should do it too.
Yeah,
Yep.
y'all should do it. Take a
Okay,
risk. Get on the
back,
plane.
get on a plane, wear the sparkles, attract the Tracys. Oh man. So yeah, your reinvention started because something really tragic happened to you.
Yeah, so like many people, when a parent dies and it's unexpected, it kind of throws you into a little bit of a why am I here moment. And I am not going to waste my life type of moment. So I don't know what you want me to share, but do you want me to share kind of what happened? Okay,
Yeah, please do.
cool. So, I mean, it wasn't cool, but cool.
Dark
Cool.
humor. We're good. Cool.
So I was 21 at the time. I had just, yeah, I think it was like on the verge of maybe my 22nd birthday. And I had always been a super creative person, wanting to get back and develop some sort of creative path in my life. And that's sort of like the context for part of this story. And my mom, super healthy, very thin, super vibrant, energetic woman, spent her entire life raising six children. My parents got divorced when I was 15. And in that divorce, like many divorces, there was a big battle over, resources and what was going to happen later. So my mom had to actually go to work probably for the first time in not her adult life, but in many, many years because she had spent most of her time raising children. And she got divorced, was like starting this career, decided to start her own business, met a man, like everything was going for her. And I was so proud of her because when I think back to the earlier days of my mom, especially like right after she was getting divorced, there was a lot of drama. There was a lot of victim mentality, like, how could he do this to me? And how could he leave me? And like, and feeling like, oh, well, I should be taken care of and kind of stuff. And that, you know, that mentality, even in and of itself, what really created something in me. Like, I don't ever want to have to rely on someone else to survive, because it was a huge, like, she was in a mode of survival, but also kind of in this victim mentality. So when she started to pick herself up and start on this path to starting her own business and meeting this man, they were engaged, and like her life had just like started over. I'd never seen her so happy. So it was right around Easter time, and she says to me, Tracy, I'm going to do an elective surgery. I'm going to go in the hospital and get this thing done. And I was like, what is it? She's like, reconstructive bladder surgery, which was not a lie, but it wasn't the full truth of what was happening. And I think I'd been planning on going to my grandparents. She was living in my grandparents' beach house at the time. And I think I was planning on going to meet some friends, up with some friends there, while she was still going to be like recovering in the hospital or on the next day home. And so at that time I was in LA at university, and we drove down to Orange County to go see her in the hospital on our way to the beach house in San Clemente. So I went in to see her in the hospital, and she kept telling me, you know, they're a little bit concerned. My feet are really swollen. You know, they weren't expecting this kind of bruising. And one of the doctors came in, and, you know, they measure your lung capacity or something when you have major surgery. And they were measuring her lung capacity, and they were saying like, oh, it's not really good. You're supposed to go home tomorrow. I'm not sure what's going on there. So I'm like, is everything okay, Mom? And someone else had come in to visit her too. And so I didn't really get quality time with her. And my friends were outside to come pick me up. So I'm like, oh, you know, just thinking as an optimistic 21-year-old, not thinking anything of it, I leave. We head down to my grandparents' house. I meet my boyfriend there. My best friends, Kate and Rich, are there. We're getting ready to cook dinner, and we have some other friends coming over, and we're just about to have a blast, you know, and do our little college day things and like wrap up our senior year or whatever, or their senior year. I was taking a break at the time. And the phone rings at the house, my grandparents' house where my mom was living. And my friend Rich picks up the phone, and all of a sudden his mouth drops and he looks gray. And I'm like, and he's a Colombian guy, so he's kind of like darker skinned. And I'm like, what? And he's like, well, maybe you should talk to her daughter. And he hands me the phone. Like, I think of this moment, hands me the phone. And what was being said on the other line just like literally could not register. Like, I couldn't register it. And what they were saying was, we don't think she's going to make it. You need to get down here right now. And you need to call Doug Byers, who was her boyfriend or whatever at the time, or her fiance. And you need to call anyone who needs to know and be here, like, get to the hospital right now. Like, I just left. And what happened is they had gotten her up from the bed the first time in like 3 days, and she was throwing blood clots, and they didn't pick it up. And she threw a blood clot, went into her lungs, suffocated, collapsed, died, couldn't breathe, like gasping. I mean, that's what they tell us. I don't know. I wasn't there, but I was the last person to see her in my family before she died. So I was the person who had to call everyone and tell them what was going on. It was crazy. And we were all kind of like in college or something at the time. Later, we found out that she didn't just have reconstructive bladder surgery, but she had a tummy tuck and liposuction. And my mom was very thin. She was probably 125 pounds and 5'8". So very tall, very thin. The reconstructive bladder surgery she wanted because she was like having incontinence from having so many kids. And so when she would laugh, she would sometimes pee her pants. So that kind of made sense. But the other things like I'm like, what? Like, didn't really make sense at all, because I'm like, you didn't need that. Like, what was the point? And I think the saddest part about this story is what I started with, is that she finally had her life together and was finally like following her dreams. And then all of a sudden it was gone, like in minutes.
Yeah.
And I mean, so many lessons were learned from me at a very young age about following your dreams and not letting your life go by because life is so short. We don't know when we're going to go. And if we're not living every single day in alignment with what matters to us and our purpose and passion and all these things, like we're basically wasting our life. I mean, I look at that time and I look at her and it makes me so sad because I mean, obviously I'm devastated because I lost my mother. I mean, this was so long ago now. I'm 53, so I was only 21, about to be 22 at that time. And I look back at that and I still get that same emotion because like what a waste. You know, she was 45 years old. Like what a waste.
Wow, Tracy. Thank you so much for sharing. And I am so sorry. That's just so many levels of traumaticness at once. What's your mom's name?
Her name is was Carlene.
May Carlene's memory be a blessing.
Thank you. Mm.
So you're 21 or 22. You've lost your mom. Is that what triggered the first reinvention for you?
Well, yes. So, I mean, it spurred a lot in me because for me, I was such a passionate, motivated person. Like, I really wanted to make something of my life. And I think part of that was shaped by the fact that I feel like my mom always relied on other people for her
Hmm.
happiness instead of creating her own happiness from
Yeah.
within and financial well-being and all that stuff. And this was the 90s, right? Everyone's like women's empowerment and
Yeah.
women can do everything, all the things. So I knew I wanted to be like start my own business or something. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I didn't know what to do. And at that time, I think I was working in retail at Nordstrom as a salesperson. And I had taken 2 years in between my sophomore year and junior year in college. And so there was a lot that happened that allowed me an opportunity to actually get back to school. I was able to get a grant to help finish school because part of the issue was that I couldn't pay for the tuition and I was working full time. So I went back to school and I found a jewelry making class. And that jewelry making class is the thing where I really was like, oh my gosh, this is my thing. My teacher was amazing. She mentored me and really encouraged me to explore this creativity and this creative gift that I had. And she said to me, I remember this, and it might not have been the exact words, but she said something along the lines of, Tracy, you have something that a lot of people don't have. Like you're good from a skill set perspective of making the jewelry, but the thing that you really have an eye for is an eye for design and knowing what people are going to want to buy. Because I would make this jewelry and people would just buy it off of me, like in my college or whatever. And she's like, I only see people like this come through every once in a while. Most people take this class because they want to make a ring or, learn how to carve some wax. Like there's no potential for them in the future.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a hobby for them. But consider this, like consider what you can do. So because of my circumstances and everything, my university, I went to Loyola Marymount in LA. They created like a special major for me, like a special studies major. I got to take a humanities major, but with this fine arts bent. So I took all of my fine arts classes in jewelry, ended up eventually getting married right after I graduated from university to my college boyfriend. And he's like, okay, so when we get settled in San Francisco, after we move up there and I find a job, then why don't we work on a plan where you can quit your job and you could do your jewelry full time? And so I launched my jewelry company in my late 20s and that like inspired like a whole series of other events and businesses and it was amazing. But it really, transitioned me from thinking, okay, like I'm just going to have a life working in retail and owning a boutique to like actually I can be a business owner and launch this brand. And it really gave me the courage to go for it.
I love that. And your jewelry is amazing. Every time I see you, I'm like, I want a piece. You're like, well, you can commission one because like you took that course almost 30 years ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. I
And
applied in 1993, so it's been
Well, it's 2024, so
Yeah, yeah, 31 years ago she died.
like 3 decades. And so like your business itself has had many
Many
reinventions within
iterations.
it,
Hmm.
and I think if you're not reinventing and changing, you become stale, you become a fish in the water. And like you have to change. Like 31 years ago, Instagram wasn't a thing, social media wasn't a thing. Like
It was not a thing. Nope.
no. Was emails? I don't even know. Maybe
No,
fax.
not when I started. I didn't even have an email address. We had to
Like
pick up the phone and call people. I tell people this all the time. We didn't have smartphones. I had like one of those phones that had the built-in answering machine.
yeah.
People leave messages. I had a fax machine, Blair. You don't probably don't even know what that
Ooh,
is.
I had a fax machine when I started. I had a coupon company I started because I wanted free yoga. So I started a health and wellness coupon company, and I bought a fax machine because I thought that made me official, and it did. But really, it was also a photocopier, and like my friends would come over and get drunk, and we just like photocopy our faces. So, you know. So, um, and you switched also, like you wrote a book, you wrote a best-selling book, you coach jewelry designers in starting their businesses.
Mhm.
You were telling me that you're stepping into
A new phase.
another epic, maybe not even chapter, but book of reinvention with a big R, a big reinvention.
This is a big reinvention. It's
Let's
so scary. It's even scary to talk about because I it feels like so expansive and exciting. And can I tell a little backstory about how all this stuff came
Yes,
about?
of course. Please do.
So I'm launching a new program called The Art of Reinvention because I've been through so many reinventions in my life and I've seen this trend, or not this trend, but there's a lot of people who have been in business for a while who are bored right now. They're really craving something different, but their businesses are doing well. And so they're kind of in this place of like golden handcuffs, not really knowing like, how do I pivot out of this into a new audience or a new message, or how do I take my audience along with me and launch this new version of myself and get out into the world. And for some people, if you're in branding or something like that, maybe it's not the biggest challenge, but for a lot of people, they're like, how do I go from doing this to going over here and doing this and like really upgrade into this person that I'm supposed to be, who's leading a movement or a calling. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I was at a Brendan Bouchard event and he asked us, he's like, go get in groups and then I want you to share something that basically, he didn't say this because he doesn't swear, but he said, share, can I swear on here? Write down something that scares the shit out of you but a big goal that you want to hit one day.
Yeah.
And so I wrote down, and I never even thought about this before, but I just trusted the first thing that came to mind, and it was to do a TED Talk with 20 million views. And I was talking to this couple, I don't know, they help couples or whatever. I guess they were kind of famous or something. And they're like, wow, that's so cool. And that's when the name Creatives Rule the World came to me, which is going to be my rebranded podcast, which will be launching in the spring, which I'm super
Yay.
excited about. Yay. Another reinvention, because I've had this podcast, Thrive by Design, that you've been on, Blair, for
Yes.
many, many years. And it's time to upgrade that. So after this Brendan Burchard event, I went and looked up like TED Talks or TEDx Talks or whatever. And the most listened to TEDx Talk at that time had 20 million views. I was like, way to shoot for the stars, Tracy,
I
because
love it. You could totally do it. Like, why not?
I know, but I had no idea. I wasn't necessarily thinking I was going to do that one that was like the top.
Yeah.
So that started this process. I started this new brand called Creatives Rule the World. And then the pandemic started, which put everything on the back burner. So I felt like I was in this place of stagnation for years. And so I'm finally at a place where I'm ready to step into this new direction and the person that I'm like literally here to be, which is to inspire people to really tap into their creative gifts and take it to another level, to lead movements, to like change the world. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. And it feels really big. It feels freaking terrifying. And I would say I don't know what I'm doing, but that's a lie because I do know what I'm doing. And it's one of those things where it's just because it is so personal and real, like it feels like a big risk, but without risk, there's no reward. So I'm willing to do it. And I don't know, we're going to see. It's
I'm
going to be fun.
excited because you are like anyone that works with you is very lucky because you have like this wealth of information. And I've worked with clients who've worked with you and I've spoken at your events like with my other hat on, my I guess storytelling is my current hat also, but marketing and storytelling and those jewelry designers that start their businesses thrive, and you are a big part of that. So I'm excited to see where the art of reinvention goes and your offerings, especially because like I'm going to be 40 in August and my PR agency just turned 16 and I'm mostly retired. I let go of those golden handcuffs and it's
Mhm.
fucking scary because I'm in startup mode and like I never wanted to be in startup mode again, but I was juggling too many balls and I was like, what is driving my passion and what's filling my heart? And so I kept a little bit of like coaching and helping entrepreneurs be visible in the media, like helping with publicity, but well, I guess I have been reinventing myself without intentionally trying to and being aware of it. But I mean, I'm stepping into a world as a grief and resilience expert where a lot of people in the business world know me as a social media and publicity expert. So it's interesting because I'm in the reinvention stage. So I'm excited to do this alongside with you, Tracy.
I'm
Um,
excited for you.
I'm excited for you. Let's just like hold hands and run into the
Yep.
sunset of reinvention together because
Perfect.
I mean, you've done it before. Now, I have a couple final questions before we wrap up because we're going to run out of time. How do you think losing your mom in your early 20s has inspired the art of reinvention?
Life's too fucking short.
Life's too fucking short. And you know what? It's true. I freaked out and went and opened a children's center for at-risk youth in Ghana.
Yeah.
Everyone died, and I was like, I gotta go save the world. But really,
Mhm.
you don't have to do something so drastic. But life is short. If you're not happy doing what you're doing, change it. Like, gone are the days where you get a job and have it for 40 years. Like, you don't need to get that like 40 years of service button. And if you do, fantastic, like, cool. But like, there's nothing wrong with changing up what you do, whether you're an entrepreneur or you have a job. If you're not happy, do something new. Like, I mean, every so often I think about like starting a cat cafe. And like my sister always is like, if I don't need to work, I'd get a job at a bookstore. You know what I mean? Like you get to reinvent yourself. Like you are in control, right?
It's true. Yes. We are
How,
all in control
yeah.
of our outcomes. But I think what ends up happening, and I've just seen this with a lot of my friends and the people that I've spoken to and the people who are pre-ordering and securing their seats early in this program, is that a lot of them want the accountability to actually do the thing because it's
Hmm.
really easy to put it on hold because what you're doing is so easy. It's not necessarily that if you started a business before, you could probably figure out how to start a new business. That's not an issue, but it's about like having that accountability to move through it and going through like the natural progression of steps to let go of the thing that's not working and then to build the brand around the thing that is working.
Yes. And like being okay to like let things go, start new
Yeah.
things and being like pivot. You have to be able to pivot and change and adapt.
Mhm.
I love that, Tracy. How do you how do you define reinvention?
Mm. I
And
think of
you
it as an upgrade.
upgrade. I love that.
Yeah. And the reason why I think of that, so there's this great story. You're going to see these hummingbirds behind me. If you're watching the visual version, I don't know if this is audio only
It's
or what,
both.
but
It's both.
okay. But there's a story about the hummingbird. I've done a lot of plant medicine journeys and healing over the past 5 years, which has been part of this reinvention process. And I was doing a journey once, and this facilitator or healer that I was with, he's like, I feel hummingbird energy around there. And I like looked it up after, and like it's visionary, it's like, fast moving, moving forward, like all these things like nurturing and, pollinating the forest, like all these symbolisms of like what hummingbird is. So I've always had this like close thing with hummingbirds. So long story short, I've been working on my new brand and going through a whole process with that. And the the vibe that kept coming up was this phoenix rising, but I don't know, like a burning bird out of like a burning phoenix for some reason out of these flames wasn't really landing with me. It also reminds me of Phoenix, which I live in the Phoenix area, and it reminds me of like hell because it's so hot here.
Yeah, you're
Like
like,
all these
nope.
things. So on my birthday this year, I was speaking, or I spoke the day before, but I was at this, my friend Kathy Heller's event about podcasting. And I'd happened to run into an old friend of mine named Darla, and I was there with my friend Chris. And the night before, I got really triggered by my partner, and it's not his fault. It was just something that needed to happen to come up, actually. But I couldn't sleep all night. You know, when you're having those like experiences, and I like my birthday is really freaking important to me, and so I wanted to have a great day, you know, the whole thing. And I was missing him and all this stuff. And so I couldn't sleep all night. I was a mess. Like my adrenaline was like pulsing through my veins. I was just like really upset. So the next morning, my friend Chris calls me. She's like, "Hey, are you ready to go?" And I was like, start crying. She's like, "What's going on?" She's like, "I'll be right there." And she's an amazing healer. And she's like, "What do you need right now?" And I'm like, "I need to see a sign." And she's like, "Okay, well, what kind of sign do you need to see?" And I said, "A hummingbird." Meanwhile, we're in the middle of Sunset Boulevard in LA. There's no hummingbirds. It's like traffic and all the things. Are you hearing my siren?
Yeah, is that you? I thought it was maybe me.
Well, it's not.
It's okay.
I don't think
It's
it's you.
okay. We're real people
Real
in
life.
real life.
Sorry.
You
I
don't
don't
have to
have a
apologize.
completely soundproofed.
Hopefully someone's okay.
Yeah, I know. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I asked for this sign to see a hummingbird, and it's my birthday, you know, the whole thing. It takes us about an hour to get out of where we were, and we end up going to the event. And you know, on your birthday, everyone's texting you or whatever. So I open up Facebook and we sit down, and I open up Facebook and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh my God. And I show this picture to Chris. There's someone, her cousin, Chris's cousin, 3 days before had posted a picture of a hummingbird on my profile with this old tale on it about this forest, this rainforest that was on fire, and there were all these like, you know, indigenous people and sages, and there was this panther, and all the animals were walking out of away from the fire, and this hummingbird was flying back into the fire, and the panther stopped the hummingbird and said, "What are you doing?" And the hummingbird said back to the panther, "Well, I'm going to get some water to try to put out the fire." I mean, how ridiculous is that? Like a hummingbird's beak is so small, it doesn't even, like, you wouldn't be able to put out a huge forest fire with this small beak of water. And so they're like, "Well, you're not going to put the fire out," the panther says to her. And she's like, "Well, I have to at least try." You know, basically like the forest is what feeds me. I pollinate the forest with my with my beak and like all these things. And she was going through this whole cycle of life. And she's like, this is like our world. We have to try to save what's here if we can. And so the panther's like, "Okay." So the hummingbird goes back to this lake, picks up a small beak of water, and as soon as she starts flying back, a huge torrential downpour comes and puts the fire out and saves the forest. And the whole story was about, you know, showing up and contributing and doing your part, right? In this process of evolution and reinvention that you're in. So the reason why I'm sharing this story is because Phoenix Rising did not really land with me from a reinvention standpoint. What really landed with me was this hummingbird rising idea, like a hummingbird rising out of the forest fire and doing their part to step into, you know, this biggest glory and gift that they have to give to the universe.
I love it. And I also love hummingbirds. And I think you also may have seen a few other hummingbirds that day, right?
Oh yeah, you heard I didn't finish the rest. Thank you for leading me there.
Sorry, you just need to
this is
share
the
because it's
first
like very,
hummingbird.
very clear.
This is the first hummingbird story. Then I go out to lunch, and my friend Chris wants to buy me lunch, and the message right before that was like, "You need to allow people to give to you if you want to receive," and I didn't let her do that, but whatever. we made a little joke out of it. And she's like, "Do you want to walk around? We still have a little bit of time before we have to go back." And I'm like, "Sure." So you walk into the store called Alice and Olivia on Melrose. And I bought a suit from there for a photo shoot that I was doing a while back. And I was like, they had some new colorful things, and I love things with color. So we walk in, and Chris and I are looking around, and I wanted to try on a top. So I walk around the corner and I look into the dressing room, and I was like, asked the salesperson, I was like, "Is that a hummingbird?" And she's like, "Yeah." So I was like, "Oh my God, Chris, you have to look at this." Chris is like dying. If you knew my friend Chris, she's like this petite woman who just has the best laugh, and she's like dying laughing. She's like, "See?" She's like, "You asked for a hummingbird." Then we go like three other places. We see hummingbirds freaking everywhere. They're not hummingbirds flying in the air, but like hummingbirds on a welcome mat, hummingbirds
Yeah.
on a plate, like it just like random things that you wouldn't expect. So be careful what you ask for and pay attention to the freaking signs, because the universe is trying to show you something. You may not know what it is, but like open your freaking eyes, because everything will change.
I love that. Yeah, I just had a really cool experience with signs as well, where I was asking for a sign from my mom. And first she sent me, like I asked for a specific sign, and I've shared this on other episodes, but like the high level is like, I was like, also, I'm in a reinvention. I'm like, am I doing the right thing? I just like need a sign. Like, should I just like get a job and make coffee at a coffee shop? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm always like, what am I doing? Like, why, like I make my life kind of harder than it needs to be. But it's because that's how I think. My mom's name is Sharon, and so I get to the border. Like I was driving to Montana, to Lisa's, and I was like, I need a sign, Mom. Like send me eagles, send me an eagle or a peacock. I get to the border. I was like, I need to go to the bathroom. Where's the nearest bathroom? And the guy's like, oh, there's honey buckets, like outhouses right there. Or you can go half an hour down the road. There's a really great cafe named Sharon's. I'm like, huh.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, okay. And then I was driving. I was like, Mom, was that you? Is that the sign? And then as I asked that, an eagle swooped down.
Stop.
And then I was like, Mom, that for sure was you, right? And then an hour later, another eagle.
She's like, "Hello."
Oh, and then I picked up my friend Tim's sketchbook and I flip it open, and it's like, this is like, there's no method to the madness. Like he's a very talented artist. I pick it up, a quote about peacocks. And I got
Mm.
home and I felt refreshed, and I was like, I'm on the right path. Sharon said so 4 times.
There you go.
I love it. Peacocks and hummingbirds, birds of a feather and different
Yeah,
feathers flock together. And that's why
exactly.
me, the peacock, and you, the hummingbird, are such great
Mm.
friends.
Love
I,
it.
I love it. So, do you have something for our audience? I think you do.
I do. It is a reinvention guide, so you can check it out in the show notes and just click that link. Or if you have any questions about the art of reinvention, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram, which I'm sure will be in the show notes as well.
Yeah. All of
Okay.
her links, all of your links are in the show notes. Go dive into her world. You want to learn from her. She's a really cool human. I love her social medias. So I'm excited to see how the art of reinvention shows up on social media, how you reinvent yourself there. And what advice do you have for someone who is feeling like it's time for a reinvention?
Great question. Well, the first step really is to just admit to yourself that you're ready to move forward. They say that the first step is just acknowledging where you are. And I think from there, you can start to get clarity on where you want to go. My reinvention started 5 years ago at a Brendon Burchard event when I had this idea and something came up. You need to do this TED Talk. And then the Brand Creatives Roll the World came about. And that started me on this trajectory of this new version of what I'm doing. And so listen to the signs and pay attention. And, if you're in that stage of feeling like you need a reinvention, just start with the easiest step, like admitting to yourself, like it's time for something new and it's time for an upgrade. And then from there, you can start building and moving into that new direction.
Yes, it is time for an upgrade. So if this resonates with you, it's probably time for an upgrade.
It's time for an upgrade.
If you wake up in the morning dreading what you got to do and it happens every day, it might be time for an upgrade.
Time for an upgrade.
Time for an
Just gonna
upgrade.
repeat everything you say.
Yeah, I love it. You're feeling a little sad with your state of affairs in life, might be time for an upgrade. So,
It's time for an upgrade.
time for an upgrade. And Tracy can help guide you through that upgrade. So, thank you so much for joining us on Resilient AF.
Thank you so much for having me, Blair.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in for another episode. You know, it's totally okay to not be okay. You're not doing this thing called life alone. We'll hold your hand. We can be that lighthouse in the storm. You will get through it, sometimes moment by moment. But friends, just remember, you are resilient AF. That's a wrap for another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. And thank you for listening. Are you feeling inspired to bounce forward?
Let's connect at theglobalresilienceproject.com, where you can read many stories of resilience, buy our books, shop our clothing line, learn more about how to strengthen your resilience muscle, be empowered, and more.
Remember, friends, you are resilient AF.